Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 1 of the Schwep Bowl Fantasy Football Podcast. This is your host and current Schwep Bowl World Champion, Michael speaking. Nice to meet everybody. So yeah, episode 1, we're finally here. We've been wanting to do this podcast for a while, and normally I'll be welcomed by 2 current league mates, Austin and Daniel. However, I thought I'd take the reins for tonight as our schedules didn't all link up, and with the first game of the season starting tomorrow, I really wanted to get one episode under our belt so that I can give us the drive to get going. So here we go. Let's give it a shot. The first thing I thought I would do was start with some power rankings. And please take all of the offense. Obviously, this is just my opinion. But what I thought I'd do was start from who I think the weakest team in the league is, Team 10. And then we'll work our way from there down to Team 1. So right off the bat, throwing shots and haymakers, the worst team of the 2022 Schwep Bowl season, I'd have to say, belongs to our dear friend, Team Cheville. Yes, Ethan, I'm talking to you, baby. So what I'm going to start with is your roster lineup and how your build is. Your wide receiver 1 and 2 are the huge bombs of the lineup in Davante Adams and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs was my wide receiver 3 on the year in my rankings. I think he's going to have an explosive year, so that was an excellent pick. Davante Adams, I think, is in a new offense. A couple questions. A bit of a downgrade at quarterback. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers agrees after taking offense to those Hall of Fame comments and comparing Davante Adams to Alan Lazard. So there's some questions there. We don't know what the target share is going to be like. I'm assuming it's going to be fairly high. Derek Carr and Campus had nothing but great things about him. Waller is a bit banged up. He will eat into a little bit of targets. Hunter Renfrow is a force to be reckoned with, as always. So I think he will do some great things there. So I think your wide receiver 1 and 2 are your absolute bangers. You had excellent choices with that. However, the sore spot, the eye piercer on your team is those running backs. RB1, Ezekiel Elliott. I'd prefer him as an RB2 personally. He had a great weeks 1 through 8 in the beginning of last season. However, Tony Pollard erupted out of nowhere, has been looking fantastic. Camp reports have said that he's been great. His target share's increased. I just don't see Ezekiel Elliott having a top 18 running back year like he's done in past. I think he's a risk. I think he's getting older. I just don't think that he will be enough to help your running back position. On top of that, your running back 2, Dameon Pierce, obviously a Florida Gator. Dan Mullen's an idiot for not playing him in his final season, but he's a rookie nonetheless on a team with a terrible O-line. Yes, Davis Mills could get stuff cracking. We've seen what he can do. I just don't think having Zeke as your stable RB1 and banking on that, and then having a rookie on an pathetic offensive team like the Texans is a recipe for anything but disaster. On top of that, your wide receiver 3, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Many of you know he's a favorite of mine, as he was able to carry me to a championship against our friend Daniel Chirelli. However, I think that last year was a perfect scenario for him, where there was tons of Detroit Lion players who got hurt. There was running backs who were banged up. TJ Hawkinson was hurt for the end of the season. There was like 2 other receivers on his squad that were also hurt, which honestly equaled the perfect recipe for him to have a huge explosive end of the season, which I think obviously had an effect on his ADP this year. He won people championships, so people are high on him. On top of that, he was this year's feature team on Hard Knocks. So to me, the ADP is a bit inflated on what it should have been. When you win people championships and you explode weeks 15 through 17 when they matter, the ADP is going to have an effect. And obviously we've been seeing that. So I personally don't feel as comfortable with having Amon-Ra as my wide receiver 3. I'd much rather have him as my flex position. So I think that is a weakness of his. On top of that, his flex position, Juju Smith-Schuster. Great receiver, but he's on a brand new offense. We don't know how it's going to look. Yes, Tyreek Hill left. Yes, that'll leave a mammoth of targets. However, Patrick Mahomes just finished doing an interview and apologizing to his fantasy managers, saying, I'm sorry, there's not going to be a wide receiver 1 here. Basically, it's a wide receiver by committee approach where everybody's going to eat. They've got tons of talented guys, and then when you got a quarterback like Mahomes, there's always room to explode. So Juju has all the talent there. I really don't think that he's going to be as prominent as Sevilla is going to need him to be to constantly carry that flex position for him, which is partly why I have Sevilla ranked as the number 10 team in the league. His wide receiver 3, his flex position, and his running backs have a lot of questions, and honestly, one injury provides a huge hole in his roster. His bench, his best player, I would say, is Rashad Penny, and the only reason I think he's as great as he is right now is because Kenneth Walker just had hernia surgery, so the availability is low. Devonta Smith could be a great piece with A.J. Brown. We'll have to see what happens there if Jalen Hurts can finally get the throwing game going a little bit. And then Kadarius Toney, great gadget receiver, huge moves, has great boosters on him. I just hope Daniel Jones and them can figure out that offense, So I have Sevilla ranked at number 10, like I said, for the running backs, wide receiver 3 and flex being fairly weak to me, and the bench not being able to pick up any of the significant slack, honestly. Team number 9 might come to a surprise for many of you guys. I don't know if everybody's going to agree with this take or not, but I have the second to worst team in the league, team number 9 on the power rankings, being Team Boomer Bust, our friend Daniel Chiarelli. To start off, your quarterback is Kirk Cousins. You were the last person to take a quarterback in the draft. I think you took him the last round as well, or something like crazy like that. And I think Kirk is a very viable fantasy option. He's going to have weeks where he has 3 touchdowns a game. They're a very fast-paced, high-octane offense with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. I'm not sure if Irv Smith is healthy right now, but they have great coaching staff as well, to where the offense will have no trouble moving the ball. However, in a 6-point passing quarterback league, many of us have super banger quarterbacks at the position. I just don't think that he has an advantage at that position at all, because there's weeks where Kirk's going to be Kirk, and he's going to have 18 points or 16 points, a couple picks, and that's what you get with him, So I think that Kirk Cousins is a significant weakness for Daniel, whereas he's a great starting player. He'll do fine. However, in a 6-point passing league where most of the league has immense ceiling talent, I think that Daniel has a weakness there. Moving on to his running backs, McCaffrey has all the talent in the world, has all the opportunities to be honestly one of the best fantasy players to ever play the game, but the obvious question is, can he stay healthy? He's been hurt the last 2 years with some hamstring injuries. I know he had a calf injury. It's just been a rough past couple of years. Granted, the 2 years before that, he had some of the best seasons ever recorded in fantasy history. So having him as his RB1, the ceiling and the potential is incredible. It's just if he can stay healthy or not. That's the question mark, which has an effect on my ranking for Daniel. The RB2, Leonard Fournette. I'm not as high on Leonard Fournette as some of our league mates are this year. I think that the offensive line taking a huge hit preseason is going to have a really big effect, and we're not going to see it as much because we're so used to the Bucs having such a strong line to protect Brady that I think that some of these injuries that have happened in camp have really obliterated the line, which has made me a little less optimistic on Fournette's opportunity share. As well as there was an article that came out 2 days ago, could just be coach talk, but they did say they wanted to lessen Fournette's workload if possible. I think that Rachaad White is a decent rookie. I think he's got some talent. I think he'll get a couple of carries throughout the season. And I know they have a PPR back there that could get the job done. I want to say it's Gio Bernard. So I think that he's a solid RB2, no doubt. Some of these risks that I'm saying are stuff that an RB2 that you take on when you draft that position. However, I think those types of risks, as well as the risk of McCaffrey, just makes the running back room. It has great potential, but the risk and the data shows as of now, it's sketchy and it's a little shaky. His wide receiver 1, Tyreek Hill, Miami Dolphin. Love the acquisition by the team. However, this is a significant downgrade, in my opinion, from Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City offense that we're used to seeing. Tua is not Patty. I know Tyreek is adamant in saying that Tua is the most accurate quarterback he's ever had. But to me, in fantasy, you need either a huge target share for the opportunity and the volume, or you need the ability to go off for banger bombs as a wide receiver at any moment on the field, which is why your ceiling is so high and why you get drafted where you were. Now, this isn't me saying that Tyreek Hill isn't going to have those opportunities. I just don't think they're going to be as plentiful as they have been in the past. Tua's deep ball, I'm not sold on it fully. We'll see what happens. But it doesn't really have to do with Tua as much, in the sense that I think there's a lot of weapons on Miami. We have Jalen Waddle, second-year receiver. As we all know, second-year receivers tend to flourish and bloom, and that's when their fantasy relevance really starts to explode. So I think Jalen Waddle is going to continue to get his over 100 catches per year. I think that Mike Gesicki, even though he has struggled in camp, I think that he will get it going fairly easy with Tua, as they already have that rapport. And then Mike McDaniels being the new coach in the offense, we know how he works with running backs. He loves dinking and diving with them. He loves running on the outside and quick slants and wheel routes. So I think that Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, those guys are going to definitely eat into the target share a little bit, whereas last year we had people like Gaskin, where we didn't really have a run game that strong, and we didn't have gadget runs. So I think the addition of McDaniel is going to definitely eat into those targets. Don't get me wrong, Tyreek is going to get his. I'm hoping he at least gets 10 targets a game. We'll see where he goes with that. But the wide receiver one position, the ceiling is immense again. It's just really, Daniel's team name is perfect in that boom or bust. Mike Williams, I don't really have to go deep in a deep dive with him. I'm higher on him than some people. He just got a huge contract. Keenan Allen's analytics, according to our friend Austin Kranz, have been on the steep decline. So I think that Mike Williams should be in for a big year. Herbert's only going to get better. The offense is going to be there. However, there is days where he might not get as many targets as he's supposed to get, and he might be that really boom or bust receiver in your wide receiver 2 slot. It's an interesting pick for sure. Adam Thielen at the wide receiver 3. I don't hate that at all. I think Thielen will do good. He is coming off some injuries a bit. He is getting older. I want to say he's 32 years old. So there's 30 or 31 or 32, something like that. So there is a drop-off coming fairly soon. Justin Jefferson's emergence. Dalvin Cook being fed as he is. Thielen should be able to hold some strength for him at the wide receiver 3 position. It's just not as strong as I'd like it to be. Tight end, he's got Waller. Top 3 position in the league, so he has a huge advantage there. And in the 10-man league, tight end advantage is everything. The flex position, A.J. Dillon. I love A.J. Dillon. I think he's a great flex play. He's basically the 1B running back to Aaron Jones, as Green Bay doesn't have a lot of people to throw the ball to or make plays for them, because since Devontae Adams left and the cap space really took a hit because Rodgers wanted his money. So I think Dillon's a fine flex play. It's just the bench of Daniels is so risky. I don't see any upside there. Tony Pollard, sure, if one of your backs gets hurt, you can sub him in. I think your other 3 in the lineup are good. The receivers, maybe Brandon Ayuk can do something. Maybe Rondale Moore can do something. I know they've had some good training camp talks with him. And then James Cook, I don't see him doing anything this year. I know the hype's there because he's Dalvin's little brother, but I think Devin Singletary has really carved out that role. And James Cook is a smaller frame. He's more of a scat back, dump off PPR guy. I don't think he's the workload 3-down back that most think he is. And then you got T-Law, which is kind of I guess, because you have Kirk. But there's a lot of boom or bust with you, Daniel. And I think this year you're going to be on the side of bust, as the last 2 years you have went that route with the draft, and they've been boomers. I just think that this year there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off, and I think that you're going to pay a price for those risks. Coming in at Team 8, the 3rd worst team in the league, the team name of Everybody Hurts. That's right, Ethan Sadi, you're up. Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position. Many people think he's going to be a league winner this year because of the value you're getting on him. The rushing ability's there. We saw it all last year. He's got the ability to run in 3-4 touchdowns a game, which is amazing. The passing game is a bit sketchy. I don't think he's as prominent in that position as some people do. I think that he has difficulty with reads, going through his options, reading defenses. It wasn't there all as much as we thought it would be in the first year, which is not something to knock him on, as we're in the NFL and this is one of the hardest sports to adjust to from college. But we're talking about fantasy here. So Jalen Hurts' passing is a question for me. I love the rushing ability. I think he's a great quarterback. So I think, for example, Jalen Hurts compared to a Kirk Cousins, I think Seidenberg's potential at that quarterback position blows his out of the water. Running back 1, he's got Joe Mixon. I love him. High-octane offense. Should get the bulk of the carries, as always. He has little to no competition with P. Ryan in the backfield with him. So that's a solid RB1. RB2, Demont. I know we know Demont is what Demont is, in that he's going to get 18 to 22 touches a game. Maybe he'll get 4 to 6 targets. Usually a 3-down back. However, Khalil Herbert is only getting better. But God almighty, that Chicago offensive line is straight putrid garbage. They are the worst offensive line in the league by far. PFF's numbers support that. On top of that, Justin Fields has looked not the best in preseason. If his pocket isn't collapsing within 1.2 seconds, he's throwing bad reads. He's not making the correct passes and the right decisions. I'm not as high on Justin Fields as some people are. In Dynasty, maybe you can let him cook on your bench for a little bit and see what's going on with that. I just don't like Chicago at all, and I'm staying away from all of them. I do have Darnell Mooney on my team. I took him as a bench spot just for the target volume. However, I just am not in on Chicago's offense at all, so I do not like David Montgomery. RB2 could get the job done. It's just not something I'm a fan of. Getting into the wide receivers, I don't need to do too much of a deep dive because I absolutely love your receiving course, Seidenberg. Jamar Chase, alpha receiver 1. We know that. Michael Pittman had an excellent year last year. People think he's primed for an absolute breakout to be a top 10 wide receiver this year. He got an upgrade at quarterback with Matt Ryan. Not much of an upgrade compared to Carson Wentz, but it is an upgrade. That the Indianapolis Colts have discussed pulling JT's carries a bit back, simply because they think they can find other ways to score the football. So I think that Michael Pittman is primed for an absolute banger year. I love that. Rashad Bateman, a huge fan of his. I know Austin is a huge fan of his as well. From Tifton, Georgia. Shout out my cousin Tonio. I love him this year. Wide receiver 1. I think he's going to get a huge amount of targets with Mark Andrews, so that was a great pick. And then Kyle Pitts, top 3 tight end to me. Gator Nation. I think that the volume is there regardless of Mariota throwing the ball. So I think your wide receivers and your tight end are your absolute strength and anchor of this team. Jalen Hurts' upside is there. Mixon should get you what he needs to get you. The RB2 is the question mark for me. And then the flex. Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a weekly flex is a really big irk to me. I'm not a fan of it at all. I just don't think Clyde has any skill whatsoever to be an effective fantasy running back. The speed is not there. The cutting is not there. The offensive line is decent at best. I just think that they really rushed that pick when they could have had the likes of a Najee Harris or a Jonathan Taylor, I'm pretty sure, with the way that the draft order was. So having Clyde there, I'm not a fan of it. And then to make matters worse, Seidenberg's bench is honestly abysmal to me. 2 as your backup, you're never going to need him because you have Jalen. Michael Carter, yeah, RB1, I guess, but first off, you're on the New York Jets. The offensive line is abysmal. Zach Wilson is hurt. You got Joe Flacco in at quarterback for a couple of weeks. And you have Breece Hall, who should take the job fairly quickly. Michael Carter's a great running back, UNC product. I'm not a fan of that as your emergency backup running back. Tyler Lockett on Seattle. Geno Smith throwing you the ball. DK Metcalf's the alpha there. DJ Chark, decent. MVS on the KC, and then you got Chase Claypool. Just a bunch of guys who could have a week or two where they go for something nice. However, if Chase or Pittman or Bateman get banged up, you're in a bad boat, my friend. There's not too much looking good for you there. So to round off your team, I think the RB2 position is very weak because I'm not high on Chicago's offense at all. I think the receivers are great. The tight end is great. That's going to be your strong core. That's going to push you to a playoff push. I think your flex is maybe decent at best, and then your bench is fairly weak to me. That's why I had to rank you number 8. On to team number 7. I will have to go with the legendary name of Trump Trown, Max Isaac Brown. I'm not going to lie to you guys, it's getting very hard to rank because the further down I go on the list, it's really nitpicking on preferences on what I believe to be the fantasy players and the ranks and all that type of stuff. So it's getting pretty hard. I'm not going to lie for my first time doing this, but it's been very fun so far. So team number 7, Max Brown. Quarterback, Joe Burrow. Love the quarterback. I love that you have the T. Higgins stack there. Very consistent offense right there. They're huge, high octane, tons of point scoring. T. Higgins is really young. I know he was nursing a shoulder injury throughout preseason, but he seems to have healed up from that. I know he was a full participant in practice, so that's really good. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins love the stack. Najee, absolutely rock solid RB1. Didn't miss a game last year, and that's honestly what you need the most in an RB1 is health, because health is wealth, as we all know. So I love the Najee pick there. Javonte Williams, I'm not as high on him as most of the fantasy community is, because I still believe that Melvin Gordon has got some juice left in the tank. I do believe that as an NFL GM, when you look at it, of course you want to get the ball in the hands of your most talented players. But if Melvin can do what he did last year, and I don't see why there's any reason he can't, I want to say that Denver is going to make the smart choice and to not absolutely run a running back into the ground if they don't need to, if they have the personnel and the ball's moving. On top of that, the quarterback play with Russell Wilson is going to be amazing. We'll see how the dump-offs go. I think Javonte Williams is an absolute stud. He has all the talent in the world. I just don't know if his ADP at that running back position was as high as it should have been. I think it should have been a bit lower, but we're nitpicking here. I think as an RB2, he should be decent. Wide receiver 2, A-Rob. I think it's a huge addition for the Los Angeles Rams. I think he should do great things. With Cooper Kupp being there, the coverages should be pretty decent for both of them, because I know Cooper Kupp is going to get some attention this year, even though he is in the slot. Teams are definitely trying to figure out ways to stop him, which is going to benefit Allen Robinson, no doubt. So I think he's a solid wide receiver 2. I'd prefer him as my wide receiver 3, but we are a pretty strict and on-point league when it comes to drafts, so I understand how we have to reach for some players. Hunter Renfrow at the 3. I think Hunter Renfrow at the 3 is a decent play. I'd rather have him being my flex position and A-Rob be at the wide receiver 3. Honestly, because Devontae Adams is an absolute machine. He's going to hog everything. Darren Waller's an absolute machine. Hunter Renfrow is going to have those slot plays, and I think he will get somewhere between 6 to 7 targets a game, maybe average around 50 to 60 yards. If he can score touchdowns, he's a very viable fantasy option. It's just that there's some question marks there with how the Raiders are going to look as an offense. Tight end, Kelsey, nothing to say about him. The absolute prime A1 cut when it comes to tight end cloth. Flex position, Breece Hall. Once again, New York Jets running back. Not a huge fan. He is a rookie. They did draft him fairly highly. Reports out of camp have been that he's been great. However, Michael Carter is still supposedly the RB1 on paper. Could just be some coach talk. But having him as your daily flex player and not having that much better options on your team is a bit sketch. However, the stack of Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, having your rock-solid RB1 in Najee, having Javonte's potential on maybe Melvin not being what he was, and then having A-Rob and, of course, Kelsey are the main reasons I have you ranked above some of the other teams I listed. Breece Hall's a question. The bench, I honestly actually enjoy your bench a good amount. You have a lot of rookie talent. I personally believe Kenneth Walker, come week 11, is going to be the starting running back there. I think he will be a playoff winner for most teams. He was an absolute stud at Michigan State. He was a Heisman finalist. I think that Kenneth Walker is huge. Drake London as well, another rookie for Atlanta. I know he's been dealing with a knee issue. However, he has all of the attributes, all of the gifts to be a monster, and the target share is going to be there. They literally have nobody to throw the ball to besides Kyle Pitts. So if he's healthy, should be made no later than week 3, if anything. I think he'll be ready to go week 1. I think he's an absolute stud. And then Treylon Burks, the wide receiver 1, to replace A.J. Brown in Tennessee. Another great piece to have on the bench, just simply because we don't know the ceiling. We don't know what it's going to be like. With A.J. Brown being gone, that's vacating at least 120 targets on that offense. Huge, big-bodied receiver. I know there's been talks that he's struggling with separation a bit. However, there's been tons of preseason footage of him doing his routes right, getting enough separation that you need in this league. That's another huge piece. So honestly, Brown's bench, surprisingly, is one of those main reasons why I have him ranked where I have him ranked above the other teams, because he's got a great quarterback receiver stack, some solid RBs. Receivers could be enough, especially because he's got Kelsey there. And then the flex position, like I said, they're all rookies, so you might be rolling the dice sometimes, but I have a feeling that one of those guys is going to hit, which is why I have Brown ranked at team number 7. Continuing on down the list, at team number 6, I have the 3-time back-to-back-to-back three-peat champion, Cup of Don Julio, Mr. Antonio Vega. Now, separating, I have you and Kyle neck and neck. Any of you could have been the 6 or 5 spot for me. It's really close. Honestly, at this point, it's honestly picking feathers. This is a new experiment for me with the podcasting and the analyzing the teams and stuff like that. It's definitely a bit of a challenge when it comes to nitpicking all this stuff. So just know you could have been 6 or 5. But let's break down your lineup and let's get into it. Lamar Jackson, Action Jackson, huge ceiling, has a fairly decent schedule this year. I absolutely love the quarterback position there. So I think you're rocked in and solid there. Saquon Barkley is your RB1. High risk, high reward, my friend. Saquon's been hurt. All the talks in preseason and camp have looked incredible for him. He's fully healthy again. It's just the offensive line there is abysmal. Daniel Jones doesn't really help as much as we would think he would. He is just not a dump-off quarterback as much as we think he should be. He was in the beginning with Saquon. It's died down a lot. So it's just a high-risk, high-reward because that offense is so bad. If he hits, he can hit hard. James Conner as the RB2, I am not as high on him as most are. I think that the TD regression is bound to happen. I think that he scored at an absurd rate last year. Injuries played a part in that. Kyler losing the ability to rush because he got hurt played a part in that. Kyler's fully healthy again. I think James Conner is a great RB2 to have. Like I said, these little things that I'm nitpicking at are things that an RB2 should have. So I think that James Conner is a great RB2 to have. I just think that the TD regression is there, so I'm just analyzing that. Your receiving core, Cooper Kupp, absolute banger. My wide receiver 2 in my rankings, right behind J. Jeff. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. Again, there's basically nothing that can stop him in the slot. It's just not a fair matchup. Jerry Jeudy, I have wanted him to break out for what it seems like the past 2 years now. Everybody's saying this is the year, this is the year. Obviously, the quarterback change is huge. I really, really hope we see something out of Jeudy because he was an absolute monster in college, and the sky's the limit for the kid. So I hope Russ can really get it going with him. I know Vega is, obviously he's on your team. I know you're very high on him and you have very high expectations for him. I don't see him filling those shoes that you would want him to in that wide receiver 2 role. However, you do have Cooper Kupp, who honestly can count for a receiver and a half. So I think that the risk of Jeudy is honestly worth it because of Cooper Kupp. Courtland Sutton has been the favorite target so far in camp, and I think he's just an absolute alpha. He's going to catch a ton of touchdowns. Jeudy will be more slant, target hog, hopefully. It's going to be tough to say. It could be a Lockett Metcalf situation like we had in Seattle with Russ. I'm just higher on Sutton. But like I said, Jeudy being your wide receiver 2 with having Kupp is nice to me. Wide receiver 3, absolutely hate it. Amari Cooper. You got great value. I would have drafted him where you drafted him. So there's absolutely no complaints there. You got to go with the players on the board. I think you got him in like the 7th round, I want to say. It's just that Jacoby Brissett is absolute dog shit. He's a terrible quarterback. We saw him on the Dolphins. Maybe he's upped his game since then. Maybe I'm wrong. I just think he's awful. He's going to get the targets, no doubt. So you're relying on that consistent 8 to 12 targets a game floor. I just don't like Amari Cooper in that wide receiver 3 slot. I'm not a fan of it. With Deshaun Watson, totally different story. Absolutely electrifying player who can break the game at any second. On top of that, Amari's injuries, he's been banged up his whole career. And when he's healthy, he can get you his. He's got crisp routes. I just don't like the wide receiver 3 position there that much. George Kittle at tight end. I was getting high on him. I pushed him above Waller with all the Waller injuries that were happening during preseason. Yet we're back to square one where he's supposedly dealing with a hamstring injury and a groin injury. I'm not sure if the hamstring injury report holds as much weight, but there's been multiple sources that have confirmed that groin injury. Today, I know they did say that he was feeling not great, and the coach said, we'll take it from there. So it's not a good sign for his availability for week 1, which sucks. With the groins, I can already tell it's going to be annoying of an injury. On top of that, you got Debo there. It's just, the potential's there. I just think it's going to take a while, which is going to hit your team a bit. Julio Jones at the flex position. Now, this is a player that I flip-flop so much on throughout the past couple of weeks. At first, I was like, nah, they just signed him for some depth. And then Russell Gage got hurt, and Brady and Julio had those opportunities in camp to really try and build some chemistry. Supposedly, he's the clear number 2 now in the receiving core. The question is he going to stay healthy? Is the line going to hold up for him to develop his routes? And he's, 31 years old? He's old. That's all I know. I don't know the exact age on him. Let me check that real quickly. He's 33 years old, so not good numbers-wise when it comes to the age department. But Julio's Julio, and you can never count out somebody who's been an absolute dog at their position. So it's an interesting spot for me. I'd rather have Julio as a bench piece for sure. So topping the Julio with the Kittle injury, as well as the Amari Cooper uncertainty, it's just a little bit riskiness for me. I just think that Cooper Kupp, Lamar Jackson, and I'm higher on Saquon this year are really going to be those anchors for you. I love your bench as well, which is why I have you ranked as highly as I do as a top 6 talent, because you have Damian Harris, who is the RB1 for now in New England. Obviously, Ramondre is there, and we never can really trust Bill Belichick on what he's going to do with those running backs. But Damian Harris has showed that he deserves his. Miles Sanders, I've been so high on him every year, and he's just bitten me in the ass. Philly does not know what they're doing. However, the end of the season last year, it looked like they were finally starting to pick up on their offense. They were finally starting to develop a role. They really got the run game going. The run-pass option with Hurts started to work, and they caught fire a little bit at the end of the season. Miles Sanders' health is always the issue, though. He just gets banged up a fairly good amount. And then on top of that, we have Kenneth Gainwell, who's a pretty decent running back, and we have Boston Scott, who we know that Philly loves for those dump-offs and all that stuff. But when you have players like Damian Harris and Miles Sanders with the talent on that bench, I think that you did an excellent job with that, as well as Trey Lance. You're not going to need him as much because you have Lamar. However, if he pops off, you could either have an amazing keeper or you can have some really good trade value there. Michael Gallup, decent. I know he's been hurt a little bit. Target share should open up with Amari leaving. So it's a longer week-term play, but I like it. And then I'm high on Elijah Moore. I think he's a great receiver. It's just the quarterback positioning there is sketchy with Flacco, and then the offensive line there is weak. But overall, I really like your team, Vega. I just think that Amari Cooper and now Kittle and then Julio, not as much, but they're just a little bit of question marks to where I have you ranked. Pick number 5, you guys all know it. I just teased it in the last introduction to Vega. We have King Henry's Chubb, Mr. Yul Stark. Welcome to the podcast. Team 5. First, right off the bat, quarterback Patrick Mahomes. top 3 quarterback in fantasy. The ceiling is immense. I love it. Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb. Absolutely love your running back core. Derrick Henry for sure has some question marks with the injuries coming off of. However, everything in preseason camp, all the beat reporters, they're all saying this is still King Henry's town. This is his show. Greatest show on turf. Absolute monster. Stiff arms. He's got it all. I think him as your RB1. And then Nick Chubb, with the running back ability that he has, the offensive line, he's just, sure, he's got Kareem Hunt behind him, but he's just so good. And we know the Browns offense so consistently already that I think him as your RB2 and Henry as your RB1, as well as having Patrick, are 3 solid no matter what players that I absolutely love on your team. Mike Evans, love him as well. You've started off the draft, honestly, great. Mike Evans is a really good piece. Wide receiver 1 there. He's at 1,000 yards. He's eclipsed 1,000 yards every single season in his career. I'm not sure any other receiver's done that. Chris Godwin was a full participant in practice today, so his target share isn't going to be as big as we thought it would be to start the year. However, Brady loves him. He's an alpha receiver. We know Brady and alpha receivers, how they work. I'm not as high on Julio as some people are. I think Mike Evans is a stellar play. Wide receiver 2, DK Metcalf. Not really a fan. He's an absolute specimen of an individual at the receiver position. However, I think that quarterback room is just awful. I think they're going to want to run the ball a lot in Seattle, and I think he's going to be a really boomer bust play. And then Michael Thomas, we heard great things about him in the start of camp. They were like, yeah, Mike's back. Here he comes. That wide receiver 1 from 2018, I want to say that we all know he's here to stay. And then he got hurt again. And we know he was dealing with that ankle injury for over a year. And now he's been dealing with a hamstring injury. The coach and the offensive coordinator were non-committal on him for week 1, which is not great. So to have him as your wide receiver 3 off bat, as well as having that boomer bust DK, is a bit sketchy. However, that Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Mike Evans, Patrick Mahomes is honestly so rock solid that I have you ranked above them for fairly good reason, in my opinion. And then you have Dalton Schultz at the tight end position. I think that's a great tight end spot to have, especially as a semi-late round pick. I think you got him in the 5th or 6th round. I think it's a really good addition to your squad. It really makes you consistent in terms of volume and target, which is everything in fantasy. CeeDee Lamb's going to be the one there, no doubt, but with Amari leaving and the Schultz chemistry that was already there from last year. And on top of that, they used the franchise tag on him this year. So I think it's going to be an all-out full send year for him where he's going to really try to get that big contract for next year wherever he goes. So I think you have a great tight end in Dalton Schultz. Flex position, Antonio Gibson. Boy, did you luck out a little bit. Obviously, prayers up to Brian Robinson. He was shot in attempted carjacking. He will be okay. I know he took a couple bullets to the knees and in the quads. So the road to recovery is going to be a little bit of a tough hill for him. According to Jesse Morris, the fantasy doctor, he expects him to be back by week 9-ish, around then. So Antonio Gibson, honestly, lucked out, and so did you, Mr. Starkman, because the reports out of camp were that Antonio Gibson was just not doing what he needed to do. He was an RB1 a year ago where everybody thought he was going to be huge for this team and really be an anchor. And then as the year went on, he got hurt, he got dinged up, and it just proved that he wasn't really meant to be a full 3-down back. There were even reports that he was struggling on special teams. So this was a player who went from RB1 with the whole fantasy world at his fingertips to really struggling to be a 3-down back to even really being a fantasy viable flex option. But with opportunity comes everything, and with that running back going down over there, I think Antonio Gibson is a pretty solid flex play for a little bit. J.D. McKissick is that PPR back over there, but I think you lucked out a little bit on that, which boosts you up a bit in my rankings. And then you got J.K. Dobbins on the bench. I don't think he's going to be ready until like week 3 or 4. However, I'm very high on the kid's talent. I think by week 8 or 9, he's going to be an absolute stud. So I think he's going to move up to your flex position with no doubt, and that's going to really round out your roster, in my opinion. I really love Christian Kirk on your team. They just signed him to a huge bag in Jacksonville, man. I'm pretty high on Trevor Lawrence's talent. Jacksonville's Jacksonville, sure, and we have to take everything with a grain of salt. However, I really like Christian Kirk's potential, so I'm pretty high on him. And then George Pickens, absolute monster. He's been lighting up the league. Preseason, he looks like an absolute beast. And honestly, the way I look at it, there's no better team in the league in drafting receivers than the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they absolutely slam dunk that position in every draft. They hit on Juju. They hit on Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown. George Pickens looks like an absolute monster. I love that pick. Sky Moore, another rookie talent. I don't think he's going to be as good as people want him to be in fantasy. I think that he could be a long haul pick to have on your bench, and the value is there and the potential is there, so obviously he's got to stay on the bench. So I really do like the upside of your bench because of J.K. Dobbins. Christian Kirk, I think, is a ready-to-go solid flex option, and I think George Pickens could honestly elevate to your wide receiver 2 or 3 as the year goes on. So that's why I have you ranked right in the middle of the league, Kyle. On to Team 4, we have no other than myself. Team Hollywood Cookin'. It was really tough to rank me and Lior. I think me and him could be flip-flopped around 4 and 3. There's a debate for it. So let's just break down my team and we'll get into why I have me at the rank 4. The quarterback position, I think I have an absolute advantage over everybody in the league with Josh Allen. He's the white Michael Jordan, as Ray would say. The rushing ability, the passing ability, he's an absolute freak of nature. Not to mention the Bills' defense is absolutely spectacular. The offensive line is incredible. The receivers are great. The tight end, wide receiver 1 in Diggs, the emergence of Gabe Davis. There's just not enough I can say about Josh Allen and the potential. He's been the quarterback 1 the past 2 years. So I'm really high on him as the quarterback 1 to finish the year again. Austin Eckler was your RB2 last year. I absolutely love him at the value that I got him at the 7th pick in the draft. The passing volume is going to be there. He's in a super high-octane offense. I do think he's going to regress on the touchdowns a little bit. However, I do think he's going to be consistent enough, especially with us moving to a full PPR league, where him as my RB1 is an absolute rock-solid staple. And at the value I got him at that 7th pick, I really think it's going to elevate my team a really good amount. RB2, I've got DeAndre Swift. I'm so high on him this year. Georgia Bulldog, absolute stud. Hard Knocks hype train. I just look at the running back room, and yeah, Jamal Williams, he's got the heart on Hard Knocks. He's a cool guy and stuff, but I think DeAndre Swift is going to be an absolute hog this year. He's going to get all the fucking touches. He's going to get all the passes on the dump-offs from Jared Goff. I think that they're always going to be in a position where they're going to be in either tight games or they're going to be coming from behind. So I really think that DeAndre Swift is going to be an absolute smash at the RB2 spot this year. So I really think that my quarterback and my running backs have such a great positional advantage. They're definitely the core of my team no matter what. So I'm really liking how my draft started with those 3. My wide receivers, I've got DJ Moore, Hollywood Brown, and Brandon Cooks. I'm very high on DJ Moore this year. I'm not extremely high, but I'm higher than most on him this year. If you go back to the draft board, he looks like a reach at the ADP, but I drafted him over players like DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, and it's just, I think that the floor for him is always there. He's almost finished as a top 12 receiver last year. I want to say he was like a couple of points off. And he's been with horrible quarterbacks his entire career. I think Baker's an upgrade at the quarterback position, and I think that the floor is stable. I think Christian McCaffrey being healthy and hopefully staying healthy is going to benefit him. And I just think that he's going to have a great year this year. So as my wide receiver 1, I don't love it. It's not a flashy name. However, I think the volume and consistency is going to be enough, and I think that he's going to finish in the top 12 this year. My wide receiver 2, Hollywood Brown. I think me and Austin are extremely high on him this year. I think him and Kyler are going to do incredible things, especially because DeAndre Hopkins is suspended the first 6 games of the season. So I think right off the bat, he's going to be an absolute hog. I love him. I love the talent. I love the fact that he has chemistry with Kyler from college. And I wanted Marquise Brown in this league last year almost every week. I would text Kyle every single weekend, yo, Kyle, let me get Marquise Brown. And I'll think about it. And then, Kyle, he's very, very rough when it comes to trading. He'd rather die with the ship and sink with it than do the trading thing, which I get. No problem against it. Everybody's got their own way, So I'm very excited to have Marquise Brown on my team this year. And then B. Cooks. Once again, you can sense a trend. My wide receivers aren't insanely flashy, the names or the offenses they're on. However, Brandon Cooks is honestly the perfect person to say Mr. Reliable for. He finished as the wide receiver 20 last year in PPR. Nothing crazy. However, he had some crazy quarterback shit going on. He did average almost 11 targets a game, and I think Davis Mills is going to get even better this year. So I think him as my wide receiver 3 is honestly pretty decent compared to some of the other people we have in the league at wide receiver 3 position. Like with Vega, I know we were comparing Amari Cooper. I know Max has Hunter Renfrow. So players like that, I love Brandon Cooks over just because he's an absolute stud. And I think that there's nobody else in Houston who's going to help. So like I said, the receivers, not flashy names. However, I think they're going to be super consistent. And with my PPR running backs and the quarterback I have, I think it's going to be a really good, solid foundation. Dallas Goedert at the tight end position. This honestly really made me enjoy my team. Before Goddard fell to me, I wasn't too excited. I was kind of getting nervous. However, I think even Ray said it when I drafted Goddard. You guys really let Michael complete his team. And obviously it's not like some super team type of thing because I just explained to you my roster. But I really think Goddard is that consistent guy. It's the first year he's finally the tight end 1 alone in Philly. A.J. Brown's there to help out. I just really think that he's going to be a solid top 8 tight end. And at the value I got him at, that's really good. Elijah Mitchell at the flex. I think he's an incredible flex player. I know not many people in the league are high on him and around some other leagues that I'm in, but I think he's an absolute stud. I know the 49ers have been so murky with the RBC by committee approach, RBBC, and nobody can stay healthy there, even Elijah Mitchell. However, Elijah Mitchell wasn't healthy most of the year last year, and he averaged almost 94 yards on the ground. He was averaging almost a touchdown a game. Trey Lance being there will take away some rushing things from him, but I think that Elijah Mitchell is going to be a fairly strong staple in this offense if he can stay healthy. So I think having him in my flex is going to be great. And then my bench, Melvin Gordon, I think, is a great piece because, as you guys know, I'm not as high on Javonte Williams as most. So I think Melvin Gordon is going to be a pretty decent bench stash. And one injury, and he's an RB1 in Denver with Russ. So the upside there is incredible to me. Darrell Henderson, I think, is going to be in a timeshare with Cam Akers the entire year. I think it's going to be whichever one goes and gets hurt first is going to boost one of the teams who has Akers or Darrell to a strong playoff run because that O-line and the scheme they have for the backs is amazing. It's just whichever one gets hurt first because one of them will get hurt. Jarvis Landry supposedly talks in preseason camp that he's Jameis Winston's favorite target. They do have Chris Olave there. Alvin Kamara is going to be there the whole year, in my opinion. And we know what Juice does. I just think Juice is Juice. Maybe he'll average 7 to 8 targets a game and get a touchdown here or there. We'll see how it works. But he's only 29 years old, and we know what we're going to get with Jarvis, so I think he's a pretty decent bench spot. And then Darnell Mooney, he's my favorite player on my bench. I'm very high on him, even though I'm not high at all on the Chicago offense. I think the volume is key with him. I think it's going to be a Terry McLaurin situation from 2 years ago where the team is absolutely garbage, but the ball's got to go to somebody's hands. So I think him and Justin Fields have proven to have that connection already. I think he's an everyday flex starter, even teetering the line of a wide receiver 3. I'm not going to go as far to say he's for sure a wide receiver 3, but I think where I got him in the draft was a steal. So overall, I think my quarterback and my running backs are my absolute strength. And then my receivers are honestly rock solid floors. And then I love my flex and my tight end, which is why I have me ranked as the 4th best team in the league. Coming in at team number 3 in the league, we have the one they call King Zvi himself. I know there's finally been a name change from Team King Zvi to AK Bada Cook. So I truly believe that Zvi and I's team can be flip-flop at this 4-3 position so many times. I I gave Zvi the 3 spot simply because the running backs that he have to me are a bit better than mine, and the quarterback wide receiver connection that he does have is very nice. But let's get into his team. Obviously, Justin Herbert, I have him as my quarterback 2 on the year, right behind Josh Allen. I think he's going to have an absolute stellar year this year. Nothing much to say about him. Dalvin Cook, absolute monster. We know he's going to miss 2 to 3 games a year. That's how it is with him. However, he's on an insanely incredible high-octane offense. And Dalvin Cook is Dalvin Cook. He's an absolute stud. So I think that Zvi getting him where he got him, I know he couldn't be happier about that. At the RB2 position, he's got Alvin Kamara. I've been trying to get Alvin Kamara in any league that I can just because he should be going as a top 6 pick to me, honestly. Kamara finished as the RB8 last year, and he had 4 games missing. He had quarterback changes. He had just a crazy season. He still finished as the RB8. He's an incredible talent. The PPR position, I think Jameis Winston's going to absolutely have a field day with him. So Zvi's running backs are just beautiful to me. I love the quarterback. And then to have the Keenan Allen stack on top of that is just fire, man. Really, really good, solid 4 core right there. Deontay Johnson at the wide receiver 2. I think he's an absolute stud. I think that the quarterback play is the big question. I know he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury in camp. He did deal with drops in the past, but I think Deontay Johnson as your wide receiver 2 is really good. It should pay dividends. It's just the quarterback play. We really got to see where we go from there. But volume is king in this league, and I think he's going to easily get 10 to 11 targets a game. Wide receiver 3, Gabe Davis. It's a bit of a reach, in my opinion, where you got him at. I know most of the league is high on him, and partly because in that crazy championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs, he had 4 touchdowns, I want to say. So to me, that really played a role in the ADP and why he's going as high as he is. Maybe Josh Allen found something in that last game. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I think that he's going to have a solid year. I'm not as high on him. I think that Diggs is there. And I think that Dawson Knox is there. And then I think the wide receivers are just going to jump around a bit. Gabe Davis will be a prominent too. And like I said, when I come this far down the list of our teams, I'm really nitpicking here and just giving my opinions on them. But I think Gabe Davis would be even better as a flex player rather than wide receiver 3. But you do have D-Hop on the bench. And when he's in, I know he's going right into that position. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Cam Akers at the flex. I'm not a huge fan. I think Cam Akers has all the talent. He is coming off a weird injury that really messed him up. He looked better in the playoffs. I know he's healthy now. He was dealing with a soft tissue injury in camp with Darryl, but supposedly they're full practice now. So that's that. I know that he's going to be in a timeshare. I just rather have him on my bench spot. So you're really risking it there with him, but we'll see what happens. And then you have both of your handcuffs, which I absolutely love. Kind of takes away from your bench depth, which kind of sucks. But you do have DeAndre Hopkins, who's an absolute monster when he comes back, in my opinion. So I know he's going to go to that wide receiver 3, and you'll probably move Gabe Davis to the flex, which makes your team better than mine, which is why I ranked you above me. Overall, I think that your running backs and your wide receiver quarterback stack are your anchor. Pat Freiermuth, I think he's going to be a top 11 tight end this year. He should get some volume, but having him and Deontay is a little weird. So we'll see how that goes, but I do have you ranked number 3, Lior. Coming in at team number 2 was actually a player that took a crazy approach to the draft. Etienne Lamb on Lear J Jets, Mr. Austin Kranz. He basically went a 0 RB approach throughout the draft, which I think did pay dividends while I look at his team right now on paper. Let's just break it down. Kyler Murray at the quarterback position, Chia Pet Midge. He's a stud when he's healthy. We know the ceiling is there, 45 points a game. He's done it before. He can be an absolute monster. So I think he's a really good quarterback in a 6-point quarterback league. Travis Etienne and Josh Jacobs. I'm not as high on Etienne as I know he is, and I know some of the people in the fantasy community are, simply because I know James Robinson, once he's healthy, I know he's not healthy yet, but I know he will eat into that workload that we all want Travis to have. And then you have to take everything with a grain of salt because it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, their team is on the upswing, but the offensive line is still minute at best. We just really have to hope Travis gets those targets. So at the RB1, I'm not really a fan of it. I'd rather him be my RB2 or flex. Josh Jacobs as the RB2, I'm totally fine with. We know he's going to do his typical stuff. Yes, Devontae Adams is there now. Honestly, should help out the run game. And there's not much competition back there in that backfield. So I really do enjoy Josh Jacobs as the RB2. But the wide receivers is an absolute slam dunk, man. Justin Jefferson, my wide receiver one on the year. CeeDee Lamb, absolute target machine in Dallas. Should have an absolute breakout year, as we all know. And then A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts in Philly. It really should be a really good year for A.J. Brown if he can stay healthy. He's an athletic freak, and he's an incredible route runner, and his routes post-contact are just unbeatable. He's untackleable, honestly, at some points. So I really love the receivers. And then you have Jalen Waddle in the flex, another hog. It's honestly unfair, your receiving core. And then to have Dawson Knox, who they just signed to like 3 years, is a really good sign for you. So I think your receiving core and your quarterback are really what makes you the second best team in the league. And then if Travis can be what you think Travis is going to be, then you absolutely have a slam dunk starting lineup. The bench is decent. I think that Ramondre Stevenson is a really good piece. I think Chase Edmonds is a really good piece. The receivers I'm not too crazy on. Garrett Wilson, though, I am high. I know he's a rookie and stuff, but he should be really good for your team. So this is why I have you ranked 2 in the league. It's going to be really interesting to see how those running backs play out. But if they hit, and I don't think the risk is that crazy for them to hit, I think you have an absolutely stellar team on your hands. And then, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, we saved the best for last. In my opinion, the best team in the league, drafted-wise. JT, do you love me, Mr. Ray, Quan James. Quarterback position, I'm not as high on it, which is weird because we know we're in a 6-point quarterback league. You would think that the quarterback position would be super important in me ranking the number 1 team in the league. However, Brady is Brady. I'm never going to count out an alien. I know the offensive line is a little ticky-tacky right now, but I think Brady's such a vet that he's going to get it done no matter what. I think he's going to give you 23 points a game minimum, honestly. So I'm not as high on him as I'd like to be, but I think the potential is still there to be as consistent as he wants. So not a bad quarterback play. JT and Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor, the safest pick in the draft. Has the best floor there is. Don't really need to go much into him. Aaron Jones as the RB2, absolute smash. I'm super high on his PPR talent this year. I think he's going to do really good things. Aaron Rodgers doesn't really have anybody else to throw the ball to, so I'm really high on Aaron Jones. Wide receivers, Deebo Samuel and Cortland Sutton, I absolutely love. Terry McLaurin at the wide receiver 3. I'd rather him be a flex play. Maybe he'll do better with Wentz there. But I think Deebo is the star there. He's going to really eat again target-wise. I think he's going to continue to get running back play, even though there was reports that he didn't really want that. And then Cortland Sutton is one of my guys this year, just like yours, Ray. I know he's your guy this year. But I think Russ and him are going to have an absolute insane connection, and I think it's going to be really cool to see. And then Terry is a wide receiver 3. Like I said, not terrible. I don't love it, but we're nitpicking here. I think you're the best team in the league, TJ Hawkinson at tight end. Absolutely love that play. I think that him on Detroit is really good. I think Goff and him already have a connection. It's just a matter of him staying healthy. I know he's had some trouble. The flex position for you, I'm going to ignore Robert Woods there for now, and I'm going to put Chris Godwin in that starting lineup because he just had a full practice. I think is absolutely crazy to have Sutton, Deebo, Chris Godwin, JT, Aaron Jones, and the Brady Godwin stack is just insane to me. I think Godwin was a steal. I wanted him to fall to me. Sadly, he didn't. So I think you did a really good play in scooping Godwin. And then you got Kareem Hunt, the best bench RB besides A.J. Dillon to me, the second RB in the league, RB2-wise. I think he's incredible to have. So him and Chris Godwin alone are just incredible pieces on that bench, which is why I have you ranked as the best team in the league. You just have such consistency throughout, and then you have the depth that's needed to replace a star in Kareem Hunt or Chris Godwin. You can plug and play any of those players week in and week out. And if Robert Woods is any glimpse of himself, I know he's coming off a torn ACL, but if he's any glimpse of himself at all, then you've got a really solid team on your hands. So I think you're the safest team. I think you have the best depth skill-wise. Obviously, there could be a team or two in here that have a little bit more depth, just multiple players body-wise. However, talent-wise, with you having Kareem Hunt and Chris Godwin, I don't think there's two other players on anybody else's bench in the league that's that insane, which is really why I have you ranked as the team one in this league for the 2022 year, because this draft was really tough, man. So many players got picked that we thought were going to fall. And it honestly just proves that this league is getting tougher and tougher. And that's what I love to see, man. I love seeing everybody reach on the players they want to reach on. I love ADPs not being a thing in this league because we never really know who's going to be drafted. And in this type of year, to me, depth is everything, which is, as you can see, a pattern in the rankings I had. The worse bench you had, the worse I ranked you, because injuries are bound to happen in football. It's a vigorous sport, but I think in a year like this, depth is going to be so much, especially with adding a third position to the starting lineup with an extra wide receiver. Yeah, those are my rankings. So just to recap, I've got Sevilla at 10, Saidi at 9, Dan at 8, Max at 7, Vega at 6, Kyle at 5. Remember, I have Vega and Kyle on a flip-flop. They're so close to me. Me at 4 is V at 3, flip-flop as well between those. I've got Kranz at the 2 for the wide receiver core that he has, and then I've got Ray at the 1 just for the bench depth and the consistency that he has throughout his starting lineup. This has honestly gone longer than I thought it would. It's over an hour long just doing power rankings of us. I was going to get into matchups and stuff, but seeing as I'm alone and Daniel and Austin aren't here right now, I think it's better if I just end the episode here. It's been a pleasure, and it was really fun, honestly, breaking down all of our stuff. I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say about everything and to hear your comments. And I can't wait to have guests on the show, obviously you guys, other league mates, and then to have my 2 other hosts with me. So thank you guys for tuning into episode 1 of the Schwep Bowl Fantasy Football Podcast. Today we went over power rankings, and we have football tomorrow. Bills, Rams. I think the Bills are my Super Bowl team. I've got the Bills and the over in my gambling bet. Just a little sprinkle on the parlay. You know how we do over here on these parts on Get Down 24/7 Sports. So yeah, football starts tomorrow. I can't wait. I know everybody in here can't wait. We're finally itching at it. So let's have a great start to the season, gentlemen. Good luck and cheers, boys.